successes, but he said, look, you haven't seen nothing yet. I can even do better. And I believe that tonight the American people understood that prosperity was on the ballot, and they went and they decided that they wanted to cast their ballot with the future, and that future is Al Gore and Joe Lieberman.
What is the Vice President doing right now, Ms. Brazil?
Well, for the last couple of hours, he's been working with many of us on the phone, calling voters, helping us with the radio phone call program, calling people. He's been working up to the last minute, and he's going to continue to work until the last ballot is cast tonight.
Thank you very much, Donna Brazil, at the Vice President Al Gore headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. We do want to remind those of you in states where the polls still are open that you can exercise your right to vote. That includes California, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, and the state of Alaska. Those polls close at 11 and then again at midnight in the state of Alaska. Alaska is always considered to be safe Republican territory. I think that it's fair to point out. I remember in 1980 at 8 o'clock, in 1980, we were able to project that Ronald Reagan was going to be elected president of the United States. It was that clear that early. Tonight it's much different than all of that, and as we have been saying, the Governor Bush campaign has been contesting what is going on in Florida. We have projected Florida, the state that will go into Vice President Gore's column. If it does not, all the bets that we've been talking about tonight, Tim, are off.
Absolutely right. In all those states I put up, the 14 states that Governor Bush had to win, I'm not suggesting he's going to win them, Tom. I'm not projecting he's going to win them. They are the ones he has to win. He needs to shoot some bullseyes if, in fact, he doesn't have Florida. If Florida is being contested and that gets it back in play, we shake up the map all over again.
And it's also worth pointing out that just because we project a state as a winner for one candidate or for the other, that doesn't make it so. The voters still have the last word in all of this. And Katie, before we get to the exit polls, we want to show you what the raw vote is now in the state of Florida. Can we see that one more time? As you can see, more than half of the vote has been counted so far. And at the moment, according to this, George W. Bush has a 5-point lead in Florida, but of course that always depends on where the vote is counted. We have been conducting interviews with voters all day long. There are scientific models that have held up over the years, but again, to be fair to Governor Bush, especially with polls still open, they are contesting the projected win in the state of Florida, and that's going to be vitally important in Oregon, Washington, California, Hawaii, and Alaska.
And of course, as Karl Rove mentioned, Tim and Tom, you know, there are a lot of absentee ballots still to be counted in Florida, and the Gulf Coast of Florida votes very differently than other areas, for example, South Florida. So he made a point that might be a very different electorate in that part of the state. So it'll be interesting to see how they turn out.
Tom, I can't tell you how many people have come up to me over the last couple of days and said, you know, it feels great because for the first time my vote really seems to count. And you look at this map tonight, it's counting big time, in the words of one of the vice presidential candidates. And it really is extraordinary to see how various states are falling with no discernible pattern between Democrat or Republican.
Let's talk a little bit about the exit polling, about we tried to figure out why this race is such a nail-biter and why it is so close. The candidates are splitting the vote evenly among several important groups, including the middle-class Catholics and, most importantly, independents. Among independents, almost dead even. Bush is getting 45%, Gore 44%, Nader about 7%. Now, Gore was trailing in most of the national polls going into today's vote, but our poll indicates late deciders are now tilting towards Gore. A total of 17% of all voters made up their minds in the final week, and these voters are breaking 5-4 for Gore. One reason for the tilt, which may be surprising to many people, the late report of Governor Bush's drunk driving arrest. Let's look at independents and see how they felt about the arrest. 1/4 of them said it was at least somewhat important to their vote today. Among those who did think it was important, Gore did well, winning 65%. So, Tom, for a race that seemed to be going Bush's way before Election Day, this matter, which many people thought was a pretty inconsequential event, may actually be having an impact at the polls. Tim, I think the latest poll showed that, 83% said it was not a big deal to them that George W. Bush was arrested for drunk driving 24 years ago?
Yeah, and as you focused, rightfully so, on those independent swing voters, who knows what tilted them in the final days? Was it something they thought of judgment or recklessness or preparedness, whatever? Any small thing, Katie, could have tilted this one way or the other in different states for either of the candidates. Important data.
Karl Rove is going to be very happy to hear this, to say nothing of Governor George W. Bush. Missouri for George Bush. Missouri goes into the Bush column. It has voted with the winner in every election in the 20th century, save Dwight David Eisenhower. That's a big win at this critical stage of the evening for Governor Bush, the state of Missouri. And again, to point out, the Bush people are contesting Florida. They claim that they're going to win Florida before it's all over. No doubt they're getting a lot of telephone calls from Tallahassee and other places because Jeb Bush is the governor of the state of Florida. Here's a familiar face from the American political scene, now an analyst for Fox News, Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House of Representatives. Tonight, as you look at that electoral map, Mr. Speaker, what do you think? How does the governor get there?
First of all, Thomas, the first time in 26 years I'm not on the ballot, and boy, am I glad. This is quite a cliffhanger. I would just point out that in 1988, the news media gave the Senate seat in Florida to a Democrat, and during the absentee ballot recount, Connie Mack became the senator. In 1992, the news media said that Paul Coverdale had lost, and the next morning they had a runoff, and he actually won the runoff. So Florida, I've been asking all evening, how can you have that many absentee ballots out and assume that Governor Bush has lost the state? And as you know, Karl Rove has said adamantly, they believe when the ballots are all counted, they're going to carry Florida. And I think some of the networks are beginning to back off on giving it to Gore. I think there's beginning to be a sense that, gee, this election may, in fact, as somebody said a little while ago, go all the way to Friday or Saturday while we're counting absentee ballots in Oregon, Washington, and California.
Mr. Speaker, let me just hasten to point out, I always dislike correcting you, but in fact, in 1988, as Connie Mack himself will tell you, NBC News projected that he, in fact, would be the winner, although I know that it was kind of a split decision among the networks.
Okay, I congratulate you.
Okay, and it's important to point out that whatever we project, the voters do have the final word in all of this. It does look like we are going to have a divided nation and a divided government. Whoever wins, it's going to be very close, Republican and Democrat in the House and in the Senate, and no presidential candidate will go to Washington with what you would call an overwhelming mandate.
I think that's right, and I think it probably makes it necessary for whoever the next president is to find a way to sit down with both parties and try to talk through, is there a common agenda that can move on education, on health, on issues that really matter. I think, again, my sense is, as of right now, that Governor Bush is actually going to get a majority or certainly a plurality of the popular vote. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens if, in fact, he doesn't end up with a majority in the Electoral College. But if you look at how the votes are breaking, I think he tends to be carrying his states by bigger margins than Gore is carrying the states that are going for Gore. So as the evening draws on, it's going to be very interesting to see the popular vote as contrasted with the Electoral College.
Well, as a historian and as a man who is an astute student of politics, does that excite you to some degree?
It doesn't excite me. It'll be interesting that we haven't had this since 1888. My hunch is that in the end, whoever gets the popular vote will find a way to get to a majority in the Electoral College. But I think your point's also right. This country clearly is divided, and I think you've got to give Vice President Gore some credit for a very hard-fought closing couple days, which frankly worked better than I thought they would. And I think whoever wins this election is going to have to really focus on how to reunite the country if they're going to get anything done in Washington in the next 2 years.
All right, thank you very much, former Speaker Newt Gingrich. Time to change the meter once again. We change it this time again in favor of Texas Governor George W. Bush. The state of West Virginia, which has been solidly in the Democratic column for a long, long time, Tim, now goes to Governor Bush. And the state of West Virginia, they've been counting and winning. They spent a lot of time down there, 5 electoral votes. But that is strategically important to them right now.
That's a Democratic state. Bill Clinton carried it by 15 points. Those are 2 states I've now taken off the must-win Bush column, Tom. He's at 213. He needs 58. If he wins all these states, Alaska, Wisconsin, Arkansas, Arizona, Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, Iowa, and New Hampshire, he's elected the next president of the United States.
Put Florida in that equation, just theoretically.
Well, if you add Florida, you suddenly add an extra 25 electoral votes, and you got up to 238. And you can take away Arizona, you can take away Colorado, that's 16, and you can take away Nevada, that's 20, and take away New Hampshire, and it gets a lot easier. Now, Vice President Gore, on the other hand, as we mentioned repeatedly, has led in the polls leading up to today in California, in Hawaii, in Washington, 267. He just needs one of those remaining 9 states, unless you take away Florida. Then he drops down 25 votes from here, which brings it down to 173, and that becomes a very uphill climb.
All right, keep your eye on that number, folks. We'll be back. We'll have something to say about Florida after this Decision 2000.
My name is Master Chief Billy Sunday, and I am God.
Critics are calling men of honor.
Chapin, a place where the Democrats had very high hopes. So as I say, for the Democrats to take over the House tonight, going to be very tough.
There's some more conservative Democrats running for the House this year, and we have a couple of very good visual aids on the current makeup of the House and the Senate and what it would take to shift them. So if I can ask the control room to get those ready, we'll come back to them right after Sam Donaldson on the Senate. Sam.
We have a couple of more projections, Peter. In the state of Nevada, ABC News can project that John Ensign has defeated Ed Bernstein to take the seat that was held by Richard Bryan. Senator Bryan retired. Now, Ensign is a Republican, so that reduces the net pickup of the Democrats so far tonight to only one. And in the state of Utah, welcome to the Union, Utah, Orrin Hatch, a longtime senator of that state, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, ABC News projects, has beaten State Senator Scott Howell to win re-election. It's too close to call still in Missouri, where Mel Carnahan, the late governor's name, is still on the ballot. His widow Jean might be appointed in re-election. It's too close to call still in Missouri, where Mel Carnahan, the late governor's name, is still on the ballot. His widow Jean might be appointed if he wins. And in Michigan, where Spencer Abraham is running against a woman, Debbie Stabenow, still too close to call there.
Sam, let's talk with George. Let's talk first of all about the Senate and the presidential race in Nevada. Nevada is still too close to call. This is a place where you get a lot of Democrats in Las Vegas, fastest growing city in the country, and elsewhere you get Republicans.
That's right, except of the people that have moved to Nevada since 1990, most of them in our exit polls so far are going to George W. Bush, even though, as you're right, Las Vegas has brought in a lot of union members to work in the service industry, the hotel industry. But in Nevada right now, Gore is only winning a bare majority of union voters, far less than he's winning in many of the other states across the country.
And here, of course, in Nevada is another example. We haven't even done the referendums or the propositions around the country. Quite frankly, the presidential race is too wild. But Nevada is one of these places where an enormous local issue, what to do with nuclear waste, has been on everybody's mind. And it's one of those things, as it is in other states, which will energize people to get out and vote in a lot of other races, both in the House and the Senate as well. But let me come first of all to you, Koki, and then to Sam, and ask you to use these visual aids. Give us the current makeup of the House first, Koki, and what it would take for it to change visually.
Well, the current makeup of the House is 223 Republicans, 210 Democrats, and 2 independents, one of them voting with the Republicans, the other with the Democrats. So the Democrats need 7 seats to take the House. Now, they already have one of those 7. There's a Democrat running tonight who is unopposed. So they need 6 seats. Doesn't sound hard, but as you've been seeing from the calls we've been making, they win one here, lose one there, win one here, lose one there. So even though we've projected that they will pick up at least some seats, so far it's hard to see them picking up the 6 they need.
And I don't want to get fixated on Nevada. Thanks very much, Koki. But another of the propositions on the ballot there is seeking to amend a constitutional provision that provides that only a marriage can take place between a male and a female person, and that only that shall be recognized and given effect in this state. Another example of a local proposition driving the races at many levels. Sam, makeup of the Senate.
Well, Peter, the makeup of the Senate at the moment is 54 Republicans and 46 Democrats. At the moment, we have shown that net pickup of 1 for the Democrats. But they can pick up more seats. Missouri is still close to call. Michigan's still too close to call. We haven't gotten to Montana, very tight race there. We haven't gotten to Washington State, a very tight race there. It is still possible for the Democrats to pick up more seats, mathematically, but it's highly unlikely that they're going to take the Senate, Peter.
Thank you, Sam. Just take a look at the big picture as it is now. I remember the old days when the click, click, click of the popular vote went on all the time, but the popular vote now shows with 48% for Mr. Gore and 49% for Mr. Bush. And here on the big map, you see those states: Florida, West Virginia, Arkansas, Iowa, Wisconsin, Colorado, Arizona, and Nevada still close to call and yet to be heard from. Oregon and Washington and California and, of course, Hawaii. We'll be right back after your local station checks in with the local results.
home of the News 10 Tower.